Hello again, everybody. How you doing? Hope everyone's doing well. I hope everything is going well for you at home and with school. Um, yeah. So today we're going to answer the rest of your questions that you sent to me. Let's get right to it. I'm going to address two questions here because they basically ask the same thing. Someone asked, how much background information should we include in our essay, and should we have citations if we find information through articles and websites? The person also says, I assume we would cite, but I'm not sure if I should cite things within my essay or do it separate. Hopefully that makes sense. Yes, it does. Another person asked, how many examples are too many examples in the essay? I've had a lot of people ask me this type of thing over the course of this semester and, forever. This is something a lot of students always ask. The answer is, when you're supplying background or examples or things like that, the answer always is that you should have enough so that you can convey your thesis effectively and no more. You should only have information that conveys your thesis effectively and no more. All right, let me give you an example. Let's say I were to tell you a story. I walked into class one day, if we were having class, but I walked in one day and I said, hey, a funny thing happened while I was driving to Southern. My drive to Southern is 21.5 miles from my house. Southern Connecticut State University is a university in the Connecticut University system. It has 3 sister campuses: Eastern Connecticut State University, Central Connecticut State University, and Western Connecticut State University. The student body at Southern is 11,769 students. Southern school colors are blue and white, and its mascot is the owl. You see what I'm doing here? My thesis is that a funny thing happened to me on the way to Southern. All of that background information is useless, right? Even if I were telling that story to someone who didn't know what Southern referred to, all the background I would need to have is Southern is the university where I teach, period. A funny thing happened to me while I was driving to Southern. Southern is the university where I teach. So I was driving to Southern and then I would go on and tell the story. If I worded it to say, a funny thing happened while I was driving to work the other day, I wouldn't need any of that background about Southern, right? So you get a sense of what I'm talking about here, hopefully. The only background you need is the background that supports the thesis. You sometimes have to gauge your audience to determine that. So if you were writing an essay for me, which you are, and you were referring to Southern, all you would have to do is say Southern Connecticut State University. It needs no other background other than the background that you need to support your thesis. If you were writing on an essay about Southern's reaction to the crisis that we're all going through, then you might need some of that background. You might need to mention the size of the student body. You might need to mention how many students normally live on campus and how many students commute. You might need to mention how many online classes Southern normally teaches, as opposed to what it's doing now, which is all online classes. So again, the only background information is the background information your audience needs to understand your thesis. A lot of people ran into this problem in Essay 1 when they were talking about the movies that they wanted to discuss. And I told several of you with whom I met, when you asked me, how much of the movie do I need to describe? The answer was, enough so that I understand your thesis. You only need to describe the plot of the movie as it applies to your thesis. You don't need to write 2 pages describing the entire plot of the movie, right? So you don't assume that your audience has seen the movie. You describe the movie to them, but only what they need to understand their thesis. As far as citation goes, academic writing usually uses MLA style. We'll be working on that soon. I am not requiring citations for essay 2, so don't worry about that. But academic writing generally follows MLA style. You can find plenty of websites that describe to you, how to use MLA style, but we'll be working with that a little later in the semester. Okay. So our next question is, what is the easiest / best way to transition into your other paragraphs? Another very good question. The answer is, there is no single easiest or best way to do it. The best way to transition, and you know what I'm going to say before I say it, the best way to transition into another paragraph is the way that works best in defense of your thesis. When you are writing an essay, you are presenting an argument and you are defending it, the argument being the thesis. You are presenting an argument to the reader and you are proving it, you are defending it with a series of ideas. And you need to transition from one into another. So it's a defense, it's an explanation. It's explaining something. It's that meme of the guy sitting at the table. Here's my thesis, change my mind, convince me. Or rather, here's your thesis, convince me. I thought of a little exercise that you might try to do this and pay attention to how you transition in these ideas. What if I asked you, what is the best breakfast you can have and how do you make it? What is the best breakfast you can make for someone and why, and how do you make it? Explain that to me. And then pay attention to how you explain it. Maybe record it as you're explaining it, right? Use your phone to record it. And then pay attention. How do you present it? What details do you give? And how do you transition from one point to another? As you defend this argument that you're making, try it with something simple like that. What is the best breakfast? Why is it the best breakfast? And how do you prepare it? All right, for me personally, waking up and smelling bacon frying is, as close to heaven as on earth as we get. But, explain it. Explain why. And, this is not an assignment. This is just an exercise for you to do. Record how you do that. And pay attention to how you transition. You can go back to the essays that we've read and you can pay attention to how they structure that argument and how they move from one idea to the next. That's your transition, going from one idea to the next. And someone also asked, what are some good transition words to use in order to transition to each next main idea better? That's a great question as well. There are many, many great transitional words and phrases that you can use. And I'm going to post on Blackboard an article about it that you can reference. Go ahead, go read that article, and it will give you some ideas of ways to transition and words that you can use to transition. Because words are really our only weapon in conveying these ideas. So here are some words that might help give you some ideas of how to transition. But again, the best way to do it is the way that will support your thesis most effectively. All right, your attendance question before we get to your next writing question. Because I miss baseball so much, your attendance question is, who won the 1969 World Series, and a little bit of extra credit, a little bit, who did they beat? What team won the 1969 World Series, and what team did they defeat to win that championship? Email your answer to me here, as you have been doing, okay? I have a number of people who have not sent in these answers, so I have no idea, you know, whether you're with the class or doing, you know, watching any of these videos. So if you're watching these videos and if you have not sent in the answers to this, where to go? To this email, I don't know what you're doing. Okay. Next question. Sentences. This person asked, since my essay 2 isn't submitted yet, I'll ask based on essay 1 because I'll probably have the same issue again. Yes, you probably will. And the rest of you should pay attention to that. That's an excellent question to ask, because if you see yourself having problems that you have over and over again, you need to be conscious of working on that. This person's problem that they're asking about is, how can I identify sentence fragments, or how can I prevent them? I tend to have that issue a lot when writing essays, and even after reviewing fragment assignments, I still can't figure it out. Okay, let's start with what a sentence is exactly. A sentence, which we're going to be studying once we finish looking at paragraphs the way we've been looking at them. A sentence is a grammatically complete group of words that expresses a single thought, right? Paragraphs kind of revolve around an idea that you elaborate on. Sentences are based on a single thought. Look at that sentence I just said. Sentences are based on a single thought. That is a single thought that is being expressed to you. When I say grammatically complete, I mean that it contains a subject and a verb, which, if you're in this class, we presuppose that you know what a subject and a verb is, all right? A sentence is a grammatically complete group of words that forms a single thought. In that sentence, sentence is the subject, is the verb. A sentence is. Every sentence you write has to have a subject and a verb. So the best way to catch sentence fragments is in proofreading, which should be the last step in writing. When your essay is done, when you're happy with the way that you are conveying your thesis, the last step you need to do is proofread. We will be discussing proofreading in a couple of weeks. So for now, the person who asked this question, I would say to you specifically, if I marked sentence fragments on your revision, go back and review them. See what you did wrong. Look at them. See that they don't have a subject and a verb. Those are the types of things that you need to look out for. Those seem to be your demons in writing. We all have certain demons, meaning a mistake that we make repeatedly. I have them myself that I have to look out for when I when I proofread the things that I write. It takes practice. It takes doing it over and over again. So if you are plagued by incomplete sentences or sentence fragments, looking at a sentence fragment assignment, you know, once doesn't do it. It takes repeated practice, and we'll discuss this more when we talk about proofreading. Since we have not discussed it yet, I'm not taking sentence fragments into account for your grade yet. The only things that I'm grading are things that we have talked about. So if I mark that you have sentence fragments, it doesn't mean that your grade is based on that. It means just, look, you're doing this. You need to start looking out for it and practice getting rid of those. But again, we'll talk more about that when we go over proofreading. Okay, the final question has to do with vocabulary. This person asked, do you think that an increased vocabulary can make a paper better when done in a way that isn't distracting and still makes it coherent to read? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by increased vocabulary. If you mean more words, then the answer is no. You should always, this is a good thing for all of us to do, always try to say the most with the least amount of words. Every word in every sentence, in every paragraph of your paper should be pulling its weight. If you convey a thought to a reader in a sentence that is 12 words long, but could be done in 8 words, then you've done it wrong. Okay, I shouldn't say you're doing it. Okay, scratch that. Not doing it wrong. You're making the reader work too hard. If the reader has to read 12 words instead of 8 words to get the same thought just as effectively, that's not a good choice. You don't want to make the reader have to work to understand what you're saying. And I don't mean like, oh, don't make us teachers work too hard. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you make a reader read extra unnecessary words, it really wears on the reader's eye. It really tires out the reader's eye. Because those extra 4 words, they add up over the course of an essay. If you're a reader reading an essay that has 100 or 200 extra words that are unnecessary that you had to read in order to get to the end of the piece, that wears out the eye. Every word should be pulling its weight. We should be trying to say the most with the least, and each word should be precise and powerful. So if you mean by increased vocabulary, if you mean more words, then the answer is no. If you mean more sophisticated vocabulary, then the answer is not necessarily. You shouldn't choose words based on how sophisticated they are. As a writer, you should choose your words you should base them on which words convey your ideas the best, which are the most accurate, not necessarily the most sophisticated, although you can use sophisticated words, but just using more sophisticated words doesn't necessarily make your paper better unless they are being used to more precisely convey what you mean. One of the wonderful things about the English language is that there are so many words to choose from. There are words that give you different shades of meaning of something. For example, and this is something I always ask if you were in a group, I'd ask you, what if I were to try to say that I was writing about someone and I wanted to write that they were annoyed. Okay, annoyed, I look at annoyed, nah, they were more than annoyed. What word means more than annoyed? Well, obviously, angry. Okay, angry. Well, what if they were more than angry? Then what would you use? Furious. All right, what if they were more than furious? Well, enraged, homicidal. I mean, this is where the thesaurus comes in handy, all right? A thesaurus is a thing that I used all through my education. Used to be a book that you'd have to look up words, But now we have thesaurus.com. Write that down, thesaurus.com. I use this website all the time. It's wonderful. It's got a little box on the top. You put in a word, you're like, yeah, this is kind of what I mean, but it's not precisely what I mean. It will give you a long list of alternate words to use. Now remember, they're not interchangeable. So you can't just put in a word and say, well, let me find the fanciest word that's in there and I'll stick it in my paper. That doesn't make the paper better. What you can do is you can put the word in that box and find a word that is more precise, that says exactly what you want to say. The best words that you can use are, think about precision. You don't want to use fancy words. You want to use precise words. If the precise word is fancy, fancier, fine, use that word. But the top priority for words should be precision, right? But that's a great question. And it's great that you guys are asking these questions and exploring these issues, because this is what writing is at the level at which you are now being asked to write. It's not following a recipe. It's making a series of choices. And all those choices that you make have the same goal in the end, and that is to convey your thesis. Okay? So when you are thinking about, how am I going to structure this? How am I going to write this paragraph? How am I going to transition from one paragraph to the next? How am I going to write good sentences? How am I going to pick the right words? There's no recipe to follow. It's a series of choices that you are in control of. Right? You get to make all of these choices in order to convey your thesis the most effectively to your audience. We've talked about audience before. If your audience is a college professor that gives you instructions on how to write the paper, because there are some that do that. Do this in this paragraph, do this in this paragraph, do that in that paragraph. If your audience wants that, do it, okay? But that doesn't mean that recipe is going to work for every essay you write. That essay is just the way that audience wants it. If the audience wants it that way, do it. And this is a skill that you already have, because you have spent 12 years going to school and feeling out the teacher. What is this teacher like? How does this teacher like it? And then you do it their way. You've been doing that for 12 years. You've been going to classes and trying to figure out what makes the teacher happy, and you do it. That's just writing for your audience. That is a principle of good writing, is writing the way that your audience wants to hear it. So I have an exercise that I've done in class that we can't really do online, but I ask students who are freshmen, I say, assume that you're writing a letter to your parents about how school is going for you in your first year of college, what your first year of college is like. And I let them write for 5 minutes, and I have some of them read what they have. Then I say, okay, assume you're writing exactly the same letter, but you're writing it to your best friend in high school. How is the first year of college going? They come out very differently. It's exactly the same letter, but it comes out very differently depending on the audience, right? They write things to their best friend that they do not write to their parents, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? Okay, so that's it for today. That was really cool. We're going to do that again with Essay 3. We're going to have another Q&A with Essay 3, because I like doing that very much. You have homework that's due today that we'll be discussing on Friday. I'm going to assign Essay 3 very soon. There's one other thing I was just thinking of. What was it? I would like at some point to see if we can all get together on a Zoom conference meeting so that we can talk in real time once or twice. I don't want to do it at 9 in the morning. I'm sure you guys don't want to either. I'm going to propose we do it at one, you know, I don't know what day yet, but like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If that doesn't work, let me know. But I'm thinking one day, a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, we'll meet at 4 o'clock on a Zoom conference call and, you know, see if it works, because I'd like to be able to talk to you guys in real time a couple times this semester. Okay, that's it. Get your homework in, get your essays in, get the attendance question in, and I will see you for Friday's video. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.